book that it takes 10,000 hours to be good at anything. And we have this idea that perhaps you should practice what you've learned like a few thousand times if you want to actually know how to do these things. And so our curriculum is about half instruction, but the other half is these team-based activities. It's repetitive, practice. It's all the stuff that really builds craft. And that's how, education, I think, going forward is going to have to be, it's really all about the fact that when the students end up here, we have sort of figured out a secret sauce that causes them to own and be responsible for what they're doing. And if you don't have that connection, we see all the time, Eileen knows this, we've seen schools that have game curriculums. And that feels to me like novelty. That feels to me like the game is a carrot. And that's not really what it's about. It's really about this project-based, team-based learning experience. And frankly, calling it a game probably makes it less sort of educational and more like, well, we're going to trick the kids into coming and thinking that it's not cod liver oil. We're actually going to teach them something, and they're going to think they're just playing a game.
Right.
It doesn't last very long.
What about you, Ali?
Well, I think...
Hello.
Yeah.
In working with a span of ages as young as 5 to undergraduates, I utilize a lot, oftentimes, their own skills to help facilitate dialogue for other students to learn, especially considering this video class I taught, co-taught this past summer. Oftentimes, students with different skill levels or different sets can be an asset in the classroom when we have about 15 students all trying to learn Final Cut Pro or not very familiar with working with a camera. So I feel that in them coming from very different backgrounds in digital media is oftentimes helpful. I do think it's a different case with my undergrads because they're a little, I know best, I know what I'm doing, which is great, but there's always room for some instruction.
So I think what's interesting that I heard from our conversations about this idea of the implications of arts and technology on education is that there will still be room for the traditional classroom, right? So students coming together, having conversations on what they're making, which would be that critique piece too, and that there will always be elements of storytelling happening, as well as the importance of methodology and the process will always be there. And you have something to add?
I have a comment on that because I think, I'm a former teacher as well, and I remember, going through, my master's program and everything else, and you're told learning takes place anywhere, and learning takes place everywhere, and you're lifelong learners, all of that. Well, now that does happen. And so it isn't always happening in the classroom. In fact, it's happening on the bus. And they are creating, and they're thinking, and they're seeing things differently. And the mobile technology that they've got that allows this relatively new phenomena of capture is something that I think is really interesting about art. Because they, and that's maybe something when students come in and they say, yes, I know how to, do a blog or, a podcast or something like that. The reality, for me at least, is that they absolutely know that, but they know something else that nobody has helped them discover what it is. They already are developing an eye. And we certainly see that with our urban youth in the schools that we support. Their eyes are fabulous and fantastic because they have seen and they have captured.
Right.
And now I think there's a bit of a thirst or a hunger to do something with all that. So there's the captured stuff, but now what do I do? I may not even call myself an artist. Instead, they are just living fully in the 21st century. So I think that's the opportunity that happens in classrooms because the art is happening other places too.
Right.
So I have a question.
Yes.
There was recently an article about how people are experiencing art exhibitions and art shows by taking pictures with their camera phones, that they are more likely to be taking pictures of the artwork in the
Yeah.
museum than
It's-
our thing at the Art Institute was always face-to-face with a work of art. So how is technology mediating the relationship between the viewer and the artwork?
That's not, that's not an art issue. I mean, go to any family event,
Yeah.
and the parents are so engaged with the technology
Yeah.
that they're not experiencing in the first person the party that they're at with their kids. It's like, I'm documenting this for the rest of time, but my kid is growing up while I'm standing behind the camera
Right.
fidgeting with the buttons. So, I mean, that's a serious, issue. We have a school, also in New York, but it's a fine arts, school, and it's fundamentally painting and sculpture and printmaking and drawing. And the thing that the students tell me that is the magic of the classroom and of the critiques, as you mentioned before, is very often as an artist, you need to grab that energy from someone else. And that's a way that you get just a tremendous sort of reinforcement. It's a little competitive. It's a little bit like, wow, I better be working too, because he's sitting there, working very hard. But that sort of osmosis of everybody being committed to doing their best and doing their work is really contagious. And
Right.
That's a big part of the process.
And I also think was really strong about Eileen's comment is this idea that the classroom is no longer a classroom. It really is your street, your car, your home, your place. And so learning truly happens everywhere now. And you're able to show that and share that and hear from friends immediately after that, right? I think it's really interesting about how it's like this ongoing process of learning, teaching, and response.
So just to the point of learning everywhere, we tell this story about teachers in Japan who are making $1 million a year, which is sort of hard to come by. You would think, but what they produce are 1/2 hour viewable on iPads and iPods SAT instruction courses. And so in Japan, the kids commute and they're not watching some stupid music video, they're watching these $5 installments of the SAT instruction courses.
Wow.
And it's hugely lucrative for the superstars, for the 10 or 11 people that are known to produce these great lessons. But it's a whole nother way that even the product of traditional education can now be commercialized. It can support the ability to pursue a lot of these different
Right.
things because it's a world market.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Eileen,
I'm
and we'll
just
move to the
going to
next
go back
question.
to Eileen's comment about people at
You are,
the...
Eileen.
I know the other...
Go back to your own comment.
The other way. I'd like to talk about my own comment, yes. No, about the transformation, or whatever we want to call it, whoops, I really am dropping this, and I'll show it to you all, it's very cute, my little phone here. But about what the
It's a plug.
the art museum experience is like now. And some of those people who are taking pictures of those famous paintings or pieces of sculpture are probably they probably have some apps on their mobile device that's letting them go perhaps a little deeper.
Yep.
It's letting them tell their own story about their response to the painting or the piece of art. And so this is really new. And very interesting, I think, for us. One thing that we've done at Motorola Mobility is I've convened groups from different disciplines, education and arts and culture, health and wellness, disaster response, where we bring them out to our world headquarters, which is in Libertyville. And we have them meet with our designers, of software designers. It is so not a sales meeting by any means, but it's really a chance for educators or people who are in the business of art, performing art as well as fine art, to just in a safe place sort of see what's going on and start to imagine how it can impact their work. And the places where they want to keep the fences up, and the places where they want to stay, they want to try to go a little deeper. And I think that we are in the middle of, or at least the starting of, some sort of revolution about what people are going to expect when they are in person visiting works of art. How to get as much as they can out of it, or how to have the experience be just the way they want it. And that's really what mobile devices are doing right now.
We spent some time with people from BAM. They've now deployed iPads for supplementary information in their galleries, but they spent an enormous amount of time trying to figure out where they should be. Are they below eye level? Should they be off to the side? You know, they're assist tools, but what they really are finding is that they're tremendously valuable for gathering reactions from the people. And so it's encouraging this loop of feedback and commentary, and that's turned out to be much more important. So the people are opting, you know, dramatically for saying something rather than the supplementary information, which was, I think, the original plan.
Right.
And I think in addition, I'd like to make the claim that I think we now experience our reality mediated, dominated by technology. So after now I visit this museum, I now have this artifact, this evidence that I can post on Facebook, I can send to my brother in Australia. It can now be not only that moment, because the moment doesn't exist any longer. It can be a moment, 500 more times
Right.
with technology.
And I also sort of feel like it's an opportunity for us to place ourselves within the context of history through technology. So like, oh, and there's a Manet, and I was there. I'm now part of the same story as that image that he created.
So if you haven't seen anybody in the
Hold on,
audience, a site called Story Tree, it's a whole idea of building a family tree, but all with video.
Mm-hmm.
And it's astonishingly compelling because a little kid sends a note to their grandparents and says, "Grandpa, tell me what it was like when you were growing up about this topic that I have to report on in school." And as soon as it starts, it just keeps branching and branching. And, Grandpa asks Grandma, and then Grandma gets in front of the camera. And they made the interface so easy. So it's really going to be a video library in perpetuity. I mean, that's the plan. But it's remarkably accessible. You mentioned this issue of sharing, and it's really remarkable how much it's connecting kids with, 2 generations or even 3 generations removed of, parents and grandparents.
Right. So what I would like you to do in the audience now is it's actually a time for you to turn and talk to someone in your row, really close to you, and just sort of like respond to some things you've heard us talk about, which would provide you an opportunity to sort of like release some of those thoughts and ideas, so we don't have to hold it all the way to the end when we do a Q&A. So it's almost like your own Q&A with each other and not necessarily with us. So why don't you take about like 3 minutes, and I'll just keep an eye on the clock. Just turn to someone and just sort of like respond to the things that you've heard from the first question.
Do we interact too?
Yeah, you two can interact if you like. What I'd like us to do now is to sort of talk about the broader implications of art and technology in terms of curriculum and innovation, right? So what is the impact that young people as producers is having on curriculum? So actual things that we teach in our classrooms. And then moving on to what's the role of the industry in helping that relationship between young people and what they're producing. So how about we start with Ali, just to talk about in terms of the impact on curriculum. What should we be teaching in our classrooms?
Well, again, I work with a range of students. For my undergraduates, I often utilize blogs for documentation of their comments on projects, or have them posting constantly about, with videos or photographs, but also their process in making, in terms of ideas, what they're thinking about, what they're looking at. I do think that they're normally online communicating within their peer group already, that this is a familiar technique that they can carry on or through the classroom.
Okay.
And with my younger students, it varies. Oftentimes I go around and have a